Thank you very much. I'm really, really happy to be here today to not share my job and my research, but to share my personal story, why I came into the ketogenic diet. So I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in February 2016. And for you, if you don't know what bipolar disorder is, in the old days, it was called manic depression. And in the old days, manic depression was depression and severe mania, psychosis, where you kind of lost sense of reality. I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2, which is more to the depressive side of the spectrum, in me anyways, and you have something that is called hypomania. So it's not, it's a euphoric state, and I'm trying, this is easily explained, a hyper state, but not psychosis, not losing awareness of reality. So my story began with mental illness when I was 12, 13. I was in 8th grade, and I was a very sensitive girl, and you know, was very affected with, you know, everything that's going on when you're a young girl. And I felt really bad. I started not go to school. I was very aware of my looks. I started to put more and more makeup on. I looked at my pores in my face. I thought I looked very ugly, and the time I put on my makeup was longer and longer, and I didn't think I looked good enough to go to school, so I just, when my parents left for work, I go to bed again. So my mom found out that I had dropped 3 months of school almost, and she was really shocked, and she took me to a psychiatrist, and who was the friend of the family, and he drew 2 lines like this, and he didn't really, I was 13, he really didn't talk to me that much, but he said, so this is the lines, and normal people, they will swing within these lines, and you are like going up and down these lines. And he put me on an antidepressive and another medication. I think it was Cipramil at the time, and SSRE, and another medication, Buspar, to treat the side effects of that. I was on that medication for 10 years. My parents were actually doctors. They prescribed this medication to me. Crazy. They asked me, how are you feeling today? Do you think you should up your meds a little bit? This didn't work for me. My teenage years were really troubled. I did school, of course, but I had depression after depression, self-hatred, like in the way you cannot even imagine it, eating disorders, binge eating, etc. And when I look back, I had tiny episodes of hypomania, these elevated states, but because I'm very outgoing, I thought that this was just me, my personality, you know, being a little bit euphoric and hyper at times. In 2014, I was competing, or I was training for 2 years to do a fitness competition, a bikini fitness competition. And I was starting to lose weight. It was not something, it was just like 1,700 calories. I was training a lot. And I became, the others that were training, they became more and more tired the more they would lose weight, and it was hard. We were doing cardio and weight training and cutting a little bit of calories, and I just got more and more euphoric. So I woke up every morning at 4, and I just had this burst of energy, and I was super excited, super euphoric, and, you know, had a pressure to speak, and it was just, this hyperness just got worse and worse. And I thought at that time that this was because I was losing weight. You could see my abs for the first time. I was reaching a goal. I had this up and down in my weight my whole life, so I think this is just because of this. And then I came closer to this competition, And my mood started to, suddenly I could feel really sick. The light was really strong, and the sound was really strong, and I could feel shaking inside of my body, and I just feel torment, and I didn't know why, and I could cry, and I didn't know why this was going on with me. And this was like shift, like putting a button. It just goes like from one to the other. And I didn't know what was going on. I did the competition, and these swings were worse and worse and worse. I started the university, and I had completely brain fog and cognition. I could not calculate. I couldn't remember stuff anymore. And I thought this must have been, stress, or, something called diet brain, where you lost a lot of weight. And this was because of this, I thought. I went to my physician, and I said, I think I'm burned out, and a lot of young, I was studying biochemistry, and a lot of the young people were also getting burned out. So I said, I've had this very stressful period, studied to come into the university. I think I'm burned out. And my doctor was like, She worked with my mother, who was 100% bipolar, but not diagnosed, in Sweden some years ago, and she said something could be like maybe your mother was bipolar, maybe you're bipolar. And I did not know what bipolar was. I just knew that that's something bipolar, schizophrenia, that's a mental illness. I'm not mentally ill. And I was very much against that, because my mother apparently had some more severe manic episodes, and I wanted to kind of put myself away from my mother. I wasn't crazy like my mother, of course. And she said to me, read about it. I'm not a psychiatrist. Just read about it and come back. And I was really offended. And I'm Swedish, so I don't show when I'm offended. But I actually went home and I changed doctor, because I'm like, I'm not mentally ill. But then I started to read about it, and I just got this gut feeling that was very uncomfortable. And I was, no, I'm not bipolar. I read about it again, and I had a back and forth. I got a new doctor, and I went to her, and I was getting worse and worse. And I said, I think I'm bipolar. And one thing that happened to me that really scared me was that I had a 5-hour exam in chemistry, which was without books or anything. You needed really to learn it by heart. And I could actually feel the pressure inside my brain. I was biking home. I didn't feel depressed, and I was biking, and then suddenly I just got a picture in my head of myself shooting myself. Like, it wasn't a voice, but it was a clear picture, and it didn't feel like I thought. It wasn't like a normal thought, I want to kill myself by shooting myself. It was just a picture like this, and I got so scared. I was like, this is crazy, what's going on inside my head? And this doctor, she referred me to this psychiatric outpatient, and I explained my case. I said, I've had many depression episodes, and now I think I've had hypomania for 6 months before this started, and now I am getting more and more depressed, and I'm getting suicidal pictures and thoughts, and I don't even feel like killing myself, but I get these pictures, and they're really scaring me. And these psychiatrists said, like, no, bipolar type 2 is very hard to diagnose for many doctors, because it's just interviews, and it can, if you're not completely insane, they can be a little bit unsure what the problem is. So they said, no, you can get a little bit manic if you train a lot, and this is just depression. They put me in a depression group with therapy. They didn't give me any medication, and I said to them, like, this is not normal depression, this is something else. So it actually took me, I got worse and worse. I got extremely suicidal, and I got catatonic. I started to get something which is a mixed state. So I could have days where I could not move at all. I could not, think. I could have at the same time like pressure to speak or pressure to write. So I could write 10 poems at the same time, but at the same time I was suicidal. So it was really crazy. And I just had given up on everything. I'm very stubborn, so I had started to kind of go into this suicide thing that I was going to do. I was researching it for many, many months, and I'm a very sensitive person, and this is really horrible to say, but I was really going into this. I was actually looking at snuff movies, or you could say I was looking at movies on the internet of people taking their own life to kind of understand how it would be for me when I took my own life. And yeah, but I couldn't feel anything, I couldn't feel these people were convulsing and everything, they were dying, real people dying, and I couldn't feel anything. It was just looking like, when I'm killing myself, I'm not going to wake up. So that was what I did. And I went to psychiatrists, and they didn't want to believe me. And I came to this last woman, and I said, I'm bipolar, I'm very suicidal, I'm going to do it, I don't know what to do. And she believed me, and she said, I think you're bipolar. And at that time, I was open to medication, because I think I can always kill myself next week if this medication doesn't work. I didn't have a lot of hopes. And, she prescribed me with antipsychotic medication, and after 3 days, my suicidal thoughts were calming down, so this medication saved my life. But I did gain 35 kilos, which I still have, most of them. I was very skinny before. I got every single side effect from this medication, like cramps. I had nightmares every night, all nights. I was sedative. I could not get up, go to my lectures. I was always late. And then I had a friend in the US who was doing the ketogenic diet, and she said, you should try it. And I was a little bit reluctant, because I was afraid of getting unstable and hypomanic and depressed. And I started it, and it helped me with the cravings, the appetite that I had from the antipsychotic medication. So even if I was overeating, at times when you're on antipsychotic medications, you can go up at night, you're not awake, you wake up in the morning and there's all this paper around your bed, and you're like, what happened? So the appetite is really extreme, and you're really sedative, in my case anyways. So I started to feel that I got more stable on the ketogenic diet. And when I was off the ketogenic diet, even if I was on medication, I got more depressed. And so I was more and more on the ketogenic diet. And then around 2 years ago, I went to my yearly check on this medication, the EKG, the heart. And my heart was just getting worse and worse and worse because of this medication. And the cardiologist said, well, if you need this medication, it's not, it's better than being bipolar, chronic illness. We are told forever you need to be on this medication. So I said to my psychiatrist, I want to try to taper off a little bit. So it took 5 months. We went from 300 milligrams to 150 milligrams. And it was hard in the beginning, and then last year in August, I actually decided to try to go off the medication completely. And I did that quite fast, actually. And I've been off medication for a year, and I feel I'm still bipolar. I still have symptoms. I still have up and down, but I can manage it, and the diet has helped me tremendously. And every time I get out of ketosis, I get depressed again. So for me, I think that it's really important to say to everybody who has a mental illness, no matter if it's anxiety, depression, that don't give up. It's not a death sentence. It might be a chronic condition, but you don't have to be on the medication maybe the rest of your life, or maybe a slower, and you can do a lot of other stuff like the ketogenic diet to kind of help you have a better life. So, thank you.